and where's your chain of custody? He goes, well, be redundant. Redundant, my ass. It's a standard. You don't do anything correct. And then he has the gall to say that this was a professional investigation. He wouldn't even say that, what Proctor did was wrong.
Are you wearing a Tyvek suit?
I am, because I'm going to demonstrate to you all how to properly collect clothing evidence from a hospital, because apparently between Proctor and this knucklehead sergeant, they don't know how to do it correctly. Yeah. And apparently, their protocols and procedures are such that, they don't have to call the crime scene investigation unit, okay? To come out and assist them, because I guess they think they know what they're doing, but they don't. They violated every rule that I can think of with the handling of the clothes from the hospital, with the collection of alleged 6 pieces of broken tail light that was recovered like a month and a half after the crime occurred. Right. Okay. It just blows my mind to see how worse this thing can get.
Yeah, it's like just when we thought it couldn't get any worse, it gets worse. All right, Ed, so you were talking, I wanted for the audience for you to give your takeaways from the CSI perspective on what we heard about today and what was, and I know you take copious notes. So,
okay, so let's start with the hospital. Okay, with the clothing, they took the 2 articles of the upper body clothing, the shirts, and they stuffed it in one bag. No, that's not how you handle it. Yes, it was already cross-contaminated. It was already mingled together, commingled, but that doesn't mean you keep it that way. You separate them. You stop that. So what I would normally do in a hospital like this, when responding to a hospital, I would set up a clean work area where I would lay down, so I would lay down clean craft paper that we have in the laboratory. I have a plastic baggie filled with rolls and rolls of clean craft paper. And you may see some that's on a table behind me. So I'm giving you a mock clean work surface behind me with clothing on it. Now you lay that down, and then you put a layer of, once you create the clean work surface, then you put another layer of clean paper, and depending on how saturated the article of clothing is with blood and any other type of moisture, you may have to put multiple layers of paper down. Okay, that's your base layer. That's going to go to the back of the article of clothing. Now, as you saw in the case of the pants were cut open, and so now I have to put that back together again to make it look like how the pants would normally appear. And so I put the pieces of the puzzle back together again, assemble it on top of the paper. Now, I'm going to photograph, the clothing from directly above, and I'm going to, without scales. Then I'm going to put scales down next to the clothing. So if you can see, I'm going to put the scales down. That's the way the clothing appears to me. I'm going to come 90 degrees down with my camera and take a picture of this. I'm going to measure this out. I'm going to sketch this. I'm going to document any defects in the clothing. And then I'm going to take medium range and close-ups of those defects and measure where those defects are on the clothing. All right. Now, what I do next is I stuff a piece of paper in between the cloth all the way through, and then through the sleeves. Mm-hmm. And then I put another couple of layers of paper on top of this. And then I'll have to, with my partner, I'll roll this up, flip it over, unroll it, and expose the other side of the paper, and saving the paper that's on the bottom, and so that I can put it back on the shirt. And then I do the same thing. I repeat that procedure. I'll measure it up and so forth and so on, any damage, and photograph it. And then once I'm done, I'm going to remove these. I'm also going to use an alternate light source. So I have the UV lens on here, and then I have my orange filter barriers, right? And then I'm going to scan the article of clothing for foreign hairs and fibers. Okay, and under the orange barrier with UV, it would fluoresce. Then I put the scales down next to it. I photograph it under the UV with the barrier in front of the lens. And then I'm going to do a clear tape lift of the fibers. I'm going to take a small section of tape and lift the fibers, foreign fibers, off the article of clothing. I'm going to transfer the tape to a clear acetate card. Okay? And then I'm going to label this all up, and then I'm going to package it up into a bag and label it. Okay, so I would be using the tape and the acetate. I'd label this up and put the hair lifts in here. So there could have been dog hairs on there. There could have been hairs and fibers from the assailants in the attack on John O'Keefe there, right?
And Ed Wallace, was this done in this case? Obviously,
no, none of this was done. Okay. Voila. So here you see paper bag in between the two, the front and the back of the shirt, the paper bag through the sleeves going all the way across, a layer of paper underneath. Okay. And then when I'm all done with all the documentation, I put a clean layer on top and now what ends up happening is I'm going to roll this up. Now the reason we do this is that so no one side of the article of clothing can touch the other side. If I had bloodstain patterns on here, or if I had other types of evidence here, say I didn't do the tape lifts for the hairs and fibers, and I want the lab to do it. Well, then by packaging in this fashion, all right, no one side of the article of clothing can touch the other side, and it's loosely wrapped. And then what I end up doing is I'll put a bag on this end, and then I'll put another bag on this end and tape this all closed, and this becomes the packaging. Okay?
That's the way it's supposed to be done, ladies and gentlemen.
And this is temporary because you've got to run it to the lab to put it in a drying chamber. What these guys did is they took two articles of clothing, threw it in one large bag, and then they left it in the truck of the sergeant for God knows how long, okay? Then they went back to the prosecutor's office where they had some kind of evidence room that wasn't secure, where everybody in the prosecutor's office that had key card access to the room could have went in. They put this kind of paper down on the floor and then laid out the articles of clothing on top of the paper for it to air dry for 6 days. No, that's not how you handle this. They should have immediately packaged this up temporarily like this and ran it directly to the laboratory where the lab has drying chambers for this type of clothing to dry in. Okay. And then from that point on, you know, they would have needed a chain of custody because you're now transferring it from your possession to the laboratory. And then the lab could have got to work on it much sooner because, as it turns out, this thing didn't get to the lab until almost a month and a half later.
Insane that has happened. Ed, could we see the back of your jacket? NYPD crime scene unit, and this is official. This is what Ed wore while he was working as an actor.
Right now, you know, I would have had my hoodie up, and I would have had a mask on, a P95 mask on,
and goggles.
Well, I have glasses, so I don't need the goggles, right? Okay. And so this way, I'm not getting hair, and I didn't have a beard at that time when I was on the job, so I didn't have to worry about this facial hair getting into the mix of the evidence. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Roger Reynolds in the chat says, Ed, this is too much work for those dummies.
Well, you would have had to do this for all the articles of clothing. Okay. I mean, I'm not, you know, this is the standard. Okay. If they're not going to follow international standards, I keep seeing bullshit in the chat section time and time again. Well, you know, you can't expect this kind of work from a small police agency. Well, if you can't do it right, then you shouldn't be doing it at all. And if the Mass State police officers who should have been trained to this level, right, if they can't do it, then they shouldn't be doing it either. Well, you know, that's why people say there should be an independent forensic agency, not controlled by police, not controlled by the prosecutor's office, to do this kind of work.
And to do it right, as this trooper said, we work for the people, we work for justice, we work to, to get to the bottom of what happened. How could you get to the bottom of what happened when you, like you say, garbage in, garbage out? There's nothing that you could do to fix it once you screw it up. Guys like you that go around through the LSU program and train different agencies across the United States and across the world, for that matter.
Well, here's the thing, too. Many crime labs and the crime scene units have ISO accreditation, or what used to be called ASCLD, American Society of Crime Lab Directors, but now it's ISO accreditation. And in order to maintain those accreditations, you have to pass an audit, you have to pass an inspection, you have to have all your protocols and procedures validated. Everybody has to have training. There has to be proficiency testing, both announced and blind. There's a lot of reporting that has to be done. And then those accreditation bodies come out and conduct audits. And if you screw up like they're doing right here, you could lose your accreditation. What this sergeant did, what Proctor did with the evidence, what that knucklehead in Canton Police Department, Lieutenant, I can't say his name anymore, because every time you say that name, every time you say that name of that lieutenant from Canton, I go crazy. I turn into, like, Abbott and Costello or the Three Stooges. Slowly I turn, step by step, and I want to fuck. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Did I say that?
Step by step I crept upon him, and when I felt his hot breath on my cheek,